Are we already living in a giant virtual world? We certainly don't have the answer to that. I'm Ryan Dawes.
And I'm George Lim.
And welcome to TechBrits, where in this episode we're going to be discussing the Metaverse. So there are currently around 400 million people in some form of the Metaverse. You kind of have to...
That's a much higher statistic than I expected.
I know, and there's 74% of US adults, even though we're a British show, we've had to use American research here, that are either interested in joining the Metaverse or are already part of it.
So the last thing I heard about the Metaverse was legs from the Meta announcement, about half a year ago, 6 months ago, something like that?
Yep, Meta invented legs.
Obviously, yeah.
Virtual legs.
But no, that seems particularly high, considering.
So, I mean, we were big fans of Second Life all the way back in the day. Have you been back in it recently?
Which is hilarious, considering the whole conversation around the Metaverse made me just go, isn't this just Second Life but in VR? Like, isn't this what it is?
And this is it, is that there is still... You're still kind of defining what the Metaverse actually is. Like, I think the idea of it is that it's just as closely resembling the real world in a virtual world as possible.
Right.
And to me, what really sets the Metaverse apart is the integration of real world things and objects, and the idea that you can literally live your life, your work life, your leisure life, all in the Metaverse.
I still think we're early, and I think that's kind of the big concern I've got around all of this conversation around the Metaverse. I've been looking at a lot of things on the run up to this episode to try and get some idea of what's actually been going on, because, like I said, in my social circles and in sort of my news, it's been very, very quiet. But I think we're early. I think we're at the Google Glass stage of the Metaverse, and I worry that Meta have jumped the gun massively.
Oh, definitely. And we'll get onto that. But we say that we're early, but $500 million worth of virtual real estate has been purchased so far. And they reckon that there will be...
Why?
I know, exactly. I mean, it's crazy. But, we could be the fools. I mean, they're probably getting it quite cheap compared to what it will be.
To be fair, if you go back to the Second Life days, that was happening there. People were buying Second Life land for millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars at the time. And even then I was like, why are people spending so much money on these things? And it's just the same conversation, but in a different format.
Oh, it's mental. And by 2028, then there's supposed to be a compound annual growth rate of virtual real estate of 31% a year. So, I mean, where
are these numbers coming from? This is nuts, considering what I've got pictured, and I'm sure some of you as well. Like, we see the Metaverse as Meta. We see the Metaverse as things like Second Life, I guess. Epic Games at a stretch with the stuff they're doing with Fortnite.
Yep.
But it's nowhere near the numbers, and more conversation are like, do we want to be living in this sort of dystopian Ready Player One style world? The headsets aren't massively comfortable to be wearing long periods of time. I know there's a lot of workplaces that are encouraging working in the Metaverse, but I didn't expect the numbers to be that high.
And when you're purchasing all this real estate, I mean, you've got to have a lot of trust that, these services are going to be around for a long time.
Exactly.
You've not just spent thousands on
Have Google got any real estate? Because I won't be buying any of that.
They're kind of falling behind in a lot of ways, going by one of our previous episodes. But this seems to work its way into every episode. But I guess this is where like blockchain and NFTs kind of come into their own. Like, they're not just... silly pics of monkeys that people have paid millions for, so I'm not going to call it too silly, just in case there's a few purchasers out there. But, actually recording your ownership of this virtual house or virtual land that
and
you've
again,
bought.
I think the crypto conversation with NFTs and blockchain and everything else, again, has come a bit early, where it's been ridiculed in this way, with the silly pictures for millions of dollars, because you haven't got the context of that virtual world, of that, right, Saturday morning, I'm going to go into the Metaverse for a few hours, meet up with some people, and be able to show off my virtual NFTs in a space where we're actually going. It's the same as buying a branded hoodie, effectively, except it's not physical because we're living in that Metaverse. We're early for this conversation.
So one of the big rivals to Second Life was IMVU.
Oh, that's a name I haven't heard in a long time.
I know. Basically every teen from the sort of like 90s would know what that is. But IMVU was obviously, yeah, a big competitor to Second Life, and the Russian feminist collective and activist group Pussy Riot are now in it.
Oh, really?
They are, yes. And it is a really cool idea. I mean, I like the whole group anyway because they have this really cool, like, pink and black punk aesthetic, which they've brought into this virtual world. But it allows them to kind of hold virtual riots in a way and protest groups and these sort of town halls to discuss like topics without being shut down.
Seeing these things, that's the key. You know, a riot is only as good as the people who are seeing it. Like I said in the Twitter episode, any platform is only as good as the number of people who are in it. So I don't know how effective things like that are going to be. IMVU is not a name I've heard of in a long time. I'm sure it's popular somewhere else in the world, but in here, at least from what my understanding, it's not top of mind.
Not huge, yeah. But the idea is that, people, particularly in these kind of oppressive societies and under these regimes, can go in and they can discuss this with their virtual avatars and not be shut down or arrested or,
Which can only be a good thing, I guess.
Mm-hmm, exactly. On the other side of things, you've got Fortnite, which we briefly mentioned, and they are doing really cool things around sort of virtual music events and really sort of interactive stuff.
Announced they're baking the entire Unreal Engine into Fortnite now, so you can literally put Fortnite characters and things in any sort of world, I guess, based on Unreal, which is a huge step up, and I don't think people realise how much of a big deal that is. It's not just, Fortnite looks pretty now. Fortnite is the central
game
hub
platform.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that is really what sets it apart from just a sort of virtual game into becoming this more sort of truer definition of the metaverse, really.
One of the things I think we've got to touch on and got to talk about, and we'll absolutely be going on about this in a few more weeks when they do talk about it, is what Apple's doing. Because there's been a lot of rumours surrounding this AR, VR headset that they're sort of working on. And we're expecting to see something at WWDC this year. I think Apple may be a dark horse in this race.
Yeah, everyone's really just looking to see what Apple's going to do. I mean, that's the case with a lot of technological advancements. Yeah. Apple's rarely there first, but they kind of
when they turn up,
they kind of set the standard and the theme. But we've heard today that Apple is going with a magnetically attached battery, which kind of makes sense for the headset. It allows people to kind of swap batteries out kind of on the fly if it starts running low.
Okay.
And the whole idea of it is that you haven't got this really sort of hefty battery attached to the headset, which with the Quest has been a sort of a little bit of a sort of issue.
From the renders we've seen, the Apple headset looks really light, which I think is going to be a huge selling point because people aren't buying these for cost and for weight. It's not something that's comfortable for long periods of time. And if Apple are going to be pushing this, they've already got Apple Arcade, and if you're going to be baking VR stuff into there as well, if there's going to be virtual worlds on the iOS store, there are a million people who are baked into the Apple ecosystem already. And I think because the headset looks light, we don't know if it is yet, but it looks like certainly from the renders, I think that's just going to be a huge selling point.
Yeah, but a lot of Apple employees have been kicking off and wanting to delay the headset until sort of hardware improved to the point where they can make it even lighter again.
Oh, wow.
And the big...
That sounds like Apple.
It does. The big contentious point is the price. It's going to be a very expensive headset, especially in its initial version, which is going to be
Which is
costing
one of the
thousands.
things I think the Quest have done right, and the Quest, and not the Pro version, but the general Quest 2, is that price is entry level. It's not cheap, but if you're wanting to just dip into something like Horizon Worlds or into VChat or any of those sort of games, it's approachable for people, and that I think is what Meta have got the upper edge on. But from what I've understood, Meta are also turning down what they're exploring in the metaverse with the AI conversation. They're kind of going, we may have jumped the gun a little bit, and they're going, look at our AI stuff.
Yeah, Meta has taken, of course, a very different approach to Apple. They've spent $20 billion so far on Reality Labs investments, and most of that seems to be going on nothing. Again, I'm king of the research, and it's not me personally doing it, but there is research out there which says that 68% of US adults are not interested in Meta's version of the metaverse.
Wow.
So a lot of that money is probably just going down the drain.
Yikes.
Yeah. And Apple, in complete contrast to Meta's version of the metaverse, really, or at least going by the comments of Tim Cook, so he says that people shouldn't be encouraged to live their entire lives in the metaverse.
No, and I don't think people want to. That's the Ready Player One model, and that's scary. The Sword Art Online model, that's terrifying. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I don't think that's the way forward. I don't think that's where the metaverse should go. I think it should be somewhere you kind of, do you want to chat in? Yeah, chat in. I want to meet you in a bar in the metaverse. Sure, but I don't want to be spending work in the metaverse, then play in the metaverse. And all of a sudden I'm living in a stack of, caravans.
That about wraps it up for the Metaverse episode. So make sure you leave us your thoughts in the comments. And until next time, ciao.
Ciao.